Have you ever been the target of your neighborhood's self-appointed queen bee who hides behind rules to make your life miserable? What if her reckless offspring turned your pride and joy fence into splinters and then had the audacity to demand you pay for his mistake? And how satisfying would it be when the law not only cleared your name, but towed away their entire facade of authority in front of the whole block? Picture this: Sunnyvale Estates, one of those picture-perfect American suburbs where the lawns look like they've been vacuumed daily and every mailbox matches the HOA-approved beige. On the surface, it's peaceful: kids on bikes, barbecues on weekends, the kind of place where you'd swear nothing bad ever happens. But underneath, a web of ridiculous covenants thicker than a lawyer's bill. And presiding over it all like a pastel-wearing dictator was Karen Whitaker, president of the Sunnyvale HOA for 6 straight years. She called herself the guardian of community standards, but everyone knew she was just the guardian of her own fragile ego. If your grass hit 2.6 inches instead of her sacred 2.5, you got a violation notice slipped under your door at dawn like some mafia warning. If your flower bed had the wrong color mulch, public shaming at the monthly meeting. She'd smile that tight little smile, say, "I'm only doing this for everyone's safety and property values, dear," then twist the knife. I was Mike Reynolds, the quiet guy at 142 Oak Lane who'd learned the hard way not to fight back, at least not out loud. 2 years earlier, Karen had nailed me with 3 straight fines for unauthorized personal expression because my bird feeder was not on the approved color palette. Never mind that it was the same shade as half the houses on the block. She rallied the board, spread whispers that I was anti-community, and suddenly my wife and I were the couple everyone avoided at block parties. I paid the fines, smiled through the meetings, and quietly installed hidden cameras around my property. I documented every passive-aggressive email, every drive-by inspection where Karen's pearl-clutching SUV slowed to a crawl. Patience, I told myself. One day the mask would slip. That Saturday morning started like any other. Sunlight poured across my porch, coffee steamed in my mug, and for once the neighborhood felt almost normal. I'd spent 2 summers building that wooden fence myself, solid cedar, exactly 4 feet high per the code I'd double-checked with the county, stained in the exact neutral tone the HOA handbook allowed. It was my little victory, a boundary that said this tiny patch of yard was mine. I was halfway through my second sip when the screech ripped through the air, like nails on a chalkboard mixed with a jet engine. Tires locked, rubber burned, and then, crash. My fence exploded in a hail of splinters. Planks flew like shrapnel. The whole section I'd just finished last month collapsed as a silver sedan buried its hood right into my front yard, engine hissing, airbags popping like sad party balloons. I dropped the mug, coffee splattered everywhere, and sprinted down the steps. There, stumbling out of the driver's door like he'd just won a demolition derby, was Tyler Whitaker, Karen's 22-year-old golden boy. No seatbelt marks, no blood, just a smirk that made my blood boil. "Whoa, dude," he slurred, brushing glass off his designer hoodie. "Your fence came out of nowhere." Like it was practically begging to get hit. I stared, jaw on the ground. "You drove straight through my yard at 40 miles an hour. My fence didn't jump in front of your car, Tyler. You destroyed my property." He laughed, that entitled little snort that only trust fund kids perfect. "Relax, old man. It was probably a hazard anyway. Mom's always saying fences like yours ruin the curb appeal. If anything, you should thank me. I saved the neighborhood from your ugly DIY project." He pulled out his phone, already texting. "I'm not paying for Jack. Mom will handle it." Before I could even form a response, the real storm arrived. Karen came power-walking down the sidewalk in her signature pastel blazer, pearls swinging, face already flushed the color of a stop sign. She didn't ask if her son was okay. She pointed straight at me like I'd committed a war crime. "Michael Reynolds, what in heaven's name did you do to my baby?" That fence was clearly protruding into the public right-of-way. Section 7.3 of the covenants is crystal clear about sightline hazards. I almost laughed out loud. "Your son just totaled his car in my yard, Karen. The tire tracks prove he swerved off the road. My fence is fully compliant. I have the county permit right here on file." She waved a manicured hand like she was shooing a fly. Compliance? Oh, please. The board voted last month that any fence over 3 feet 8 inches needs reapproval. Yours is obviously a safety risk. My son could have been killed. As HOA president, I'm issuing an immediate violation notice. You'll pay for the repairs to Tyler's car, plus a $500 fine for endangering the community. And don't think I won't call an emergency board meeting to make sure every neighbor knows exactly who the real problem is here. The audacity hit like a second crash. She was already pulling out her little clipboard, scribbling furiously, voice dripping that fake sweet syrup she used at meetings. We all want what's best for Sunnyvale, Michael. Harmony starts with accountability. Translation: harmony starts with me winning. I could see curtains twitching up and down the street. Mrs. Patel across the way already filming on her phone, the Johnson kids giggling behind their fence. Karen's empire of fear was in full swing. I didn't yell. I didn't swing. I just crossed my arms and said, calm as a summer breeze, I'm calling the police, Karen. Let's let them decide whose fence came out of nowhere. Her eyes narrowed into slits. Go ahead. But remember, dear, the board controls more than just fines. We control the narrative. She spun on her heel, already speed dialing her cronies on the HOA board. Tyler, stay right there. Mommy's got this. Within 10 minutes, the street looked like a crime scene from a bad cop show. Red and blue lights painted the houses. 2 officers stepped out of the patrol car, notebooks ready. Karen and Tyler rushed them first, of course, classic move. Officer, thank goodness you're here. She gushed, all damsel in distress now. This man's fence is a clear violation of our covenants. It caused my son to lose control. He could have died. We need him cited immediately and held liable for the damages. The entire neighborhood is at risk because of people like him who refuse to follow rules. Tyler piled on, voice cracking with fake victimhood. Yeah, it was terrifying. I was just driving normally, and boom, his stupid fence jumped out. You guys got to do something. The lead officer, a no-nonsense guy named Ramirez, raised an eyebrow. I finally got my turn. I walked them over, pointed out the skid marks that started 30 feet up the road, the deep ruts where Tyler had overcorrected straight into my yard. I've got ring camera footage from 3 angles, I said quietly, pulling up my phone. And the county permit for the fence. It's all legal. I've been documenting everything because, well, let's just say this isn't the first time Mrs. Whitaker has tried to rewrite reality. Karen's face twitched. Footage? That's an invasion of privacy. Officers, he's clearly harassing us with his little spy cameras. But Officer Ramirez was already watching the clip I handed over. The video showed everything in crystal 4K. Tyler blasting down the street way over the limit, phone in one hand, swerving like he was dodging paparazzi. No fence in sight until the very last second. The second officer crouched by the tire tracks, measured, nodded. Ma'am, these marks indicate excessive speed and loss of control. The fence is well within property lines and fully permitted. Your son is at fault here. Karen's perfect smile cracked like cheap porcelain. But the covenants. The board. Ma'am, Ramirez cut in, voice flat. HOA rules don't override traffic laws or basic physics. Your son is getting a citation for reckless driving. And that vehicle, he nodded toward the smoking wreck, is not drivable. Tow truck's already en route. The tow truck rumbled up like the angel of karma itself, chains rattling, lights flashing under that perfect Saturday sun. Karen's voice rose to a pitch that could shatter glass. You can't do this. This is harassment. I'll have your badge. The entire board will sue the department for siding with rule breakers. She was waving her clipboard like a battle flag now, pearls bouncing, face twisted into something between panic and pure rage. Tyler just stood there, mouth open, watching his precious sedan get hooked up like a defeated piñata. The smirk was gone, replaced by the wide-eyed look of a kid who finally realized mommy's magic didn't work on actual cops. Neighbors were pouring out now. Real ones, not just curtain peepers. Mrs. Patel lowered her phone and muttered, I always knew those safety inspections were personal. The Johnson dad crossed his arms and called out, Hey Karen, Maybe next time your boy keeps his eyes on the road instead of TikTok. Whispers rippled like wildfire. The same people who'd nodded along at her meetings for years were finally seeing the wizard behind the curtain. Just a bully in beige who'd weaponized a rulebook because her own kid couldn't drive straight. I stood there, arms still crossed, watching the chains tighten around the sedan's crumpled frame. The tow driver gave a thumbs up, hit the winch, and slowly, deliciously, the car lifted and dragged away, tires screeching one last pathetic protest against the asphalt. Tyler actually whimpered. Karen's face went from red to ghostly white as the reality sank in. Not only was her son liable for every penny of my fence repair, but the footage I'd quietly saved was already being forwarded to the board. Turns out I wasn't the only one with a camera. Mrs. Patel had been recording Karen's little performance too. Later that afternoon, while the sun dipped low and painted the street in that perfect suburban gold, I stood by the gap where my fence used to be. My wife squeezed my arm. "You didn't even raise your voice," she said softly. All that patience, it finally paid off. I just smiled. Because the real win wasn't the tow truck or the citation. It was watching Karen's empire of fake politeness crumble in real time. She'd spent years preaching community standards while treating the neighborhood like her personal kingdom. One reckless joyride from her spoiled prince, and the whole thing came crashing down harder than my cedar planks. The emergency board meeting she'd threatened? It happened 3 days later. I showed up with printed screenshots, the full video, and the county compliance letter. The other board members, people who'd been terrified of her for years, suddenly found their spines. One by one, they voted to censure her. For conduct unbecoming a president, they called it. Karen sat there, pearls clutched, trying to spin one last tale about misunderstandings and protecting property values. But the room was done. Even her loyalists were staring at their shoes. By the end of the night, she'd resigned in a huff, muttering about ingrates as she stormed out. Tyler's court date was scheduled. My fence repair was fully covered. And the neighborhood? It breathed a little easier, like someone had finally opened a window in a stuffy room full of rules no one ever voted for. That's the thing about these HOA kingdoms. They look unbreakable from the outside, all matching lawns and coordinated mailboxes. But scratch the surface and you find the same old story. One loud voice convinced she's above the law because she wrote the law. I never wanted a fight. I just wanted to sit on my porch with my coffee and not get fined for breathing wrong. Turns out the best revenge isn't loud. It's quiet cameras, calm facts, and letting the truth do the towing. Sometimes the bullies wear pearls and quote covenants instead of throwing punches. But when they finally overreach, when their own kid turns the neighborhood into a crash site, the fall is spectacular. And the rest of us? We get to watch from our perfectly legal porches, sipping coffee, finally free to enjoy the view. In the end, the fence can be rebuilt. But Karen's throne? That one stayed totaled. And honestly, that was worth every splinter.